Okay, we're almost at 8:30. Welcome. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. A couple quick announcements before we get the chairperson up here. This group has a commitment every Sunday night at Treatment Center. If you'd like to come at 7 p.m., it is in Quakertown. The message of hope and recovery is all that's required. If you have one of them, we'd love to have you. No time requirement, anything like that. So come out and hang with us and be of service. That's what this group is all about. We've just purchased about 3 months ago about 500 big books. We give them away at no charge to people in the program, in treatment centers, and you guys all help to carry that message, even though maybe you're not there. But if you'd like to get involved, that's what this group is about. It's about service. So see us after the meeting. With that, world's best chairperson, let's please welcome Nick. You get up here.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Nick and I am an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting. Meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. followed by our speaker at 8:30. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 right here. Please come early and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers that others may benefit from the message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Yes, sir.
My name is Gary. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Gary, welcome.
I'm Tony. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Tony, welcome. Okay, and welcome to everybody. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. With anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Our sister group is a big book study meeting that meets every Thursday at 7:30 just up the street at the Salem UCC Church, 186 East Court Street, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Coffee is on at 6:15. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and our Facebook group. Subscribe and share. You can find our speakers there, join our Facebook page to keep informed, and share upcoming events and meetings. Okay, and now with that, I have Brian to come up and read the Just for Today Prayer of Recovery.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian and I am an alcoholic. This is Just for Today, a prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And with that, Trevor's going to come up here. He's going to read the AA preamble.
Here it is. My name's Trevor and I am an alcoholic. All right, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And Kara is going to come up and read how it works for us. Or the 12 steps, I'm sorry. Part of how it works.
Hello everybody, my name is Kara. I am an alcoholic. The 12 steps of recovery. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Number 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Number 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Number 4, made a searching and moral inventory of ourselves. Number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Number 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Number 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Number 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Number 9, made a direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Number 10, continued to take personal inventory, and we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And number 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And now Nick will come up and introduce our speaker.
The 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting and declining outside contributions. At this time, we like to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees. We do have expenses, and this group provides many services. Your donations cover food, rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. And in memory of the greatest chairperson ever, Tim, let's make it rain. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and try to limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Tonight we have Danny R. from the Grace Speakers Group of New Jersey.
How's everybody doing? My name's Danny Ross, alcoholic. How's everybody doing? All right, having fun? All right, good. Yeah, so I'm here, and I got no idea what I'll say. So, look, I'm sitting here and I'm listening, so I drive in the car. The cool thing about anytime you get asked to speak in Alcoholics Anonymous, at least where I live, so I live out in like Medford Lakes, New Jersey, so it's like a hike from everywhere. And so anytime you get an opportunity to go in the car, you get, the cool thing about going on an AA road trip is you get a chance to get somebody in the car with you and hop in the car and do that AA road trip. And I spent a lot of time doing AA road trips, so we get a chance, pick my friend Tony up, got in a car, drive up here. We have a chance to shoot the breeze and catch up and talk about what's going on in life. And to me, that's one of the things in Alcoholics Anonymous that's been real special to me is the opportunity to be able to connect with anybody on any kind of normal level, right? Because where I grow up, I don't connect with much. I'm from Delaware County, so don't hold it against me. I grew up in Ridley Township, Pennsylvania. I grew up there. My dad's a meat cutter. My mom's a hairdresser. I had one older brother slap me around. One sister liked me, other one hated me. It was normal, nice and chaotic. A lot of screaming going up my home. There was always weapons being used, whether it was Hot Wheel tracks or flip-flops or you name it. I mean, and it was nice and it was normal and it was beautiful, and it's how I grew up. I don't come from the worst environment in the world. I certainly don't come from the best environment in the world. But I've been sober in Alcoholics Anonymous long enough to know that that where I come from isn't the reason I'm alcoholic, right? I'm alcoholic because I have a few things that our literature kind of explains to us. Certain qualifications you need to have. But I can tell you, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the biggest things I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous since being able to put down a drink is I learned how to connect with other people. I learned how to be honest. Anybody else come in here and not know how to tell the truth? Like fucking everybody? I thought that so I showed up in Alcoholics Anonymous and I just thought people lied just because that's what you do, because it's fun. And so I learned how to do a lot of things since I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm sure probably people have heard before said, if I would have settled for what I wanted when I showed up to get sober, I would have settled for a lot less. But my life's been good in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous since August 26, 2004. So that means I've been sober long enough to know I can't act like a newcomer anymore, but I still got a lot to learn. And I got sober just in time, right? Just in time. I was 26 years old. I had everything going for me, and I had no idea what I was dealing with. You know, I grew up, you know, I was taught right from wrong. I was a Catholic school boy, right? I was an altar boy. Was taught right from wrong. I was taught, you know, my older brother was an alcoholic. I watched what alcoholism looked like in the family growing up. I watched how it ripped my family apart. I watched how it affected my parents. He was 10 years older than me. When I was a kid, I saw him in the grips of addiction, and I was like, I never want to be like him. Anybody have one of them? You see the person in your family that's all twisted out, and you're like, I want nothing to do with that. I never want to drink. I never want to do that. I never want to be that. And as a kid, I'm a narc from an early age. Like I would go and I would bring the DARE literature home from school and be like, this is what I found in Brian's room, you know, I was just like, I'm an attention seeker from an early age. Anybody else like to seek attention? I love it, whether it's good or it's bad. And but I didn't want to be alcoholic. I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to, you know, use. I didn't want to do any of that kind of stuff, right? I saw what happened to my brother. I can remember. I remember being in my bedroom whenever I was a young kid. I can remember my brother crying to my parents about the things that he was putting in and out of his bodies, and him going to treatment and all that type of stuff. And I didn't know really what was going on. I just knew my parents said to him that everything was going to be okay. And I remember them meaning it. I remember my parents crying over it and all that kind of stuff, and they meant it, and they told him everything was going to be okay. You know what? Everything wasn't okay. It wasn't okay. You know, my brother battled this thing for years, and when he was 32, he got sick and he died. And I was 26 years old, stuck in the mix of a whirlwind of addiction. And you know, I tell you what, I can say this. You have your older brother, and he's sick and he's dying in a hospital, and he says to you, he says, Danny, you don't have to do the same things that I did. You're better than that. You don't have to do that. And I remember making a promise to him and saying, I'm not going to be like that. And man, ain't an SOB when I can't follow through with the promise I made, right? Because I don't know what I'm dealing with. I remember I'm saying, yeah, I'm not going to do this. And I don't know. You know, if it wasn't for God, I don't know what happens. But anyway, so from Delco, right? So that means I have a terrible attitude from the time I grew up. Anybody else from Delco in here? There's one guy in here. So I get a terrible attitude from the time I grew up. I'm a wise ass. I've been like that since the time I was a kid. And I'm a know-it-all. I'm lazy. I'm really lazy, right? I'm super lazy. I didn't like going to school. I didn't like applying myself in anything in my entire life. I'm opinionated, right? I got all these things, and this is me, and I have no idea what I'm dealing with. The problem is, you get somebody like me that I start drinking in high school, not because I wanted to drink. It was because I felt like isolated, I felt left out, I felt this, and I don't think that's like, I think that happens to a lot of us here. And I felt isolated, and everybody wanted to ask me to drink, and all of a sudden I felt a part of life and all. I think that happens to all kinds of kids in high school. Right? I don't think it happens to just alcoholics. I think this is what happens. You go into high school, I'm afraid of girls, can't look at them, you know, don't know how to talk to girls. I'm the kid in high school that I'm petrified, right? I'm that guy. I don't know how to do it. But you ask me to go drink in the woods behind the Brooks Apartments, and I start drinking a couple beers. I'm like, hello, how are you? What's going on? And I found out from an early age that when I drink, I like you better. And when I drink, I like me better. And that's kind of how drinking starts. It starts from having a good time. I'm a sideshow freak when I drink. I can drink a beer real fast. You know, one of those, you ever see those crazy people that take the solo cup, bend it in half, and they can evaporate a glass of beer in like a half a second? I'm that guy. And I end up in college. I go to college. I'm pledging a fraternity, and I'm like the sideshow freak that they're rolling. What do you see this one we got here? What do you see what this kid can do? And look, I drank like a lunatic. And I had a lot of fun. So if there's anybody having any fun drinking, I feel sorry for you because I had a whole lot of fun drinking. Alcohol works very good when it works. Went to Mansfield University. I don't hold it against anybody in here if you have no idea where that is. It's in the middle of nowhere. Upstate Pennsylvania, 11 miles south of Elmira, New York, and stuck in the middle of woods. And there's nothing really to do up there besides like go to school and and drink. And I didn't really like school, so I did a lot of drinking. And I remember failing out of college and going back home, and I'm the baby boy of an Italian mom. So anybody has an idea what that's like, I'm like the crown prince of the world, right? I've done nothing wrong since the time I was a little kid. My mom has always told me that everything was going to be good and you're going to be okay, baby boy. And man, I come back, in my early 20s, come back with a wicked, drinking habit, and I come back to my parents' house and she tells me everything's going to be great. And I'm like, you're damn right it is. And problem is I'm stuck in the grips of alcoholism, and my drinking starts taking on different forms. Like I bet you it happens to a lot of people. And what ends up is years later, I'm 25, 26 years old. I remember my father telling me I needed to get a career, and I was like, that's a great idea. Where can I get me one of them, right? Because I'm one of those kind of guys that I can go to work and I can hold a job down and I can get loaded. Some people can't. I can. I'm able to go to work, I can hold down a job, I can get loaded. I'm broke Thursday, I get paid on Friday, and I'm broke right away. I mean, I waste everything. I hold my parents hostage for money. I'm living in my parents' basement, I'm one of those kind of guys that I get my parents to co-sign for a car because I know they're going to pay the bill when I don't pay it anyway because my parents don't want their credit racked up. And like I knowingly did that type of stuff in my 20s, and I felt like I was okay with it. I felt I was entitled. I was entitled to that. Now, my dad was a meat cutter. My mom was a hairdresser. They didn't have two nickels to rub together, but man, did they do a lot for us. And Dad says, get a career. So I'm like, where can I get one? And my dad pulled some strings at an early age, and he got me a career. My father worked real hard for a long time, and he was real involved in his labor union. He's a proud union guy, and my dad pulled strings for me in my early 20s, and he got me a good job. And he said, Dan, if you go to work and you work hard, and you give an honest day's effort for an honest day's work, I'm going to help you out, get you kind of got job that can provide for a family if that's what you want. And he didn't lie to me. And he gets me this hotshot job. I give myself a nice job. And now I got to get a girl, right? So I finally figured out somewhere in my 20s I'm able to talk to them when I drink, so it works out well. And I'm good at first dates. Second dates aren't really easy for me, but first dates are good. And because anybody that's a decent human being, you spend enough time with me back then, and you get to hang out with me, you're like, look, this isn't going anywhere anytime for anything good. So if you had a half a decent head, you're like, nah, stay away. But I ended up falling in love. I fell in love. I met a girl. I'm like a creepy stalker boyfriend. You guys, a couple of you girls in here know what they're like. I'm the kind of guy, we meet once and I fall in love. And she made the mistake early on in us dating. She was like, so I'm the guy that shows up at your house and I wait for you to get home from work. I'm that guy, right? And I remember we were dating, and it was funny because I'm driving up here because my wife now, the poor woman, but she lives in Wyncote, so we're driving. I'm somewhat familiar with the area. We used to drive down Old York Road and all that kind of stuff. And I'm the guy, I pull up, I'm wasted, and I'm sitting in front of her apartment waiting for her to get home. And I'm getting whacked in the car, and she comes in, we're dating a couple weeks. She's like, we gotta have a talk. And I'm like, I thought it was getting serious, and she says, look, you're creeping my neighbors out. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you're sitting out in front of the house, you're waiting for me to get home, you're all whacked out, my neighbors see you, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just waiting for you. And she says, look, I got an idea. I'm like, I like this. And she says, I'm going to give you a key to the apartment. She says, if you get here before I get home from work, just let yourself in. And I don't know if anybody else could see where this goes, but that was an invite to move in. And here comes the bag, here comes the toothbrush, and everybody knows the rule. When the toothbrush goes in, it's over, right? So I move in, I squat, I become a squatter in her apartment. And fabulous woman. I mean, thank God I'm together with her many, many years later. But she was an awesome woman then, and she's an awesome woman now. But she has these kind of goals. Let's hang out, spend time together. Let's cook together. I'm like, look, I don't know what you're looking for, but I don't do none of that stuff. I go to the bar. That's what I do. I'm on 3 different APA pool teams, right? I cheat at shuffleboard. I cheat at darts, right? I just go out to the bar every night of the week. That's what I do. And so this whole idea that you want to spend time and have fun and all that kind of stuff, that's cute, but we can do it at the bar. And she's like, well, we could hang out and spend quiet. I don't do that. And I'm so immature and I'm so self-centered and all that. I'm like, because I don't even know what I'm doing. I just want to get wasted every night. And what happens is I show up in that relationship the way I've showed up anywhere else in any kind of place in my entire life, like a freaking wrecking ball. And what I did with that woman was I put her through the absolute worst torture that you could ever put somebody through. I abused that woman in any way, paper, shape you could, right? Because I'm so self-centered, I'm so selfish, I don't understand even what's going on. I don't know how to have a healthy relationship with a man, let alone a woman. Try that. I don't even know how to look at a guy in the eyes and tell him the truth, and I'm supposed to have some kind of a normal relationship with a woman. I had zero idea how to do that. And we go through this tumultuous craziness of alcoholism, and it starts with like, all right, let's move out of PA, let's move to Jersey, let's buy a house. Oh yeah, everything will be great, move to Jersey, it'll be fabulous. We buy a house together, we get engaged. I learned how to, spackle holes in walls because I have a little bit of an anger issue. Anybody else has that issue? I like to punch holes in walls when I don't get what I want. And it turns into this rabbit hole of nonsense of years of torment, of alcoholism, of everything's really good one day because when I'm loving you. I'm on you like flies on stuff. But then when I'm in my grips, I'm the most antisocial, reclusive SOB that I can hide in a basement and I don't talk to nobody. And it scares people. I remember people were scared. They're like, what is wrong with them? You can put me in a social setting outside. I'm good time, all the time, good time. You get me when I'm in here, I'm hiding in a basement by myself. I don't want to talk to anybody. I can't tell you the truth. And when people say to me, what's wrong with you? And I go, I don't know. Therapist, I don't know. Love the therapist. Thank God for those people. I tried with those people. I went to therapy trying to find out there was a thing I have figured out over the years. The reason why I didn't get any kind of benefit from therapy, I never told them the truth. I absolutely never told them the truth. I can remember going to therapists and they're like, what's going on with you? I'm riddled by anxiety, I'm riddled by depression, all this type of stuff going on. And I remember a couple of these guys, what's your drinking like? I'm like, it's fine, it's normal. So I'm 25 years old, 24 years old, and I drink. Well, how much do you drink? I'm like everybody else drinks. And I can never wanted to figure out what really the issue was. And what ends up happening is another blackouts. I don't know what your blackouts look like. Mine, I have no idea. Mine, I started remembering about them maybe like 3-4 years sober. Some of that stuff came through of what was going on. But I went through another one of these rips and these runs, and whatever happens, I'm the guy that turn the cell phone off. Anybody else do that? You turn the cell phone off and disappear. I love to do that. I turn my cell phone off and I just go into oblivion. And then you turn the cell phone on like 2 days later, and you got you have 34 missed calls, right, and 34 voicemails, and it starts off with my life starts off really nice. It's the fiance going, hey, we're just trying to see when you're coming home for dinner, and then another one comes through, hey, it's like 9 o'clock at night. I was wondering if you're coming home. And then I get dad calls, hey Dan, Liz calls, she's worried about you. Where you at? And then mom's calling, and and I got all these missed calls and missed calls and missed calls, and then at the end it's like fiance's on, like, you better be dead, you rotten SOB. And what I didn't realize, what I did is I stole their peace of mind. I stole their, security, because I was so selfish and self-centered. And then I would show up, I would come walking in the door like a wrecking ball. Hey, what's going on? And everybody's looking at me like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, nothing. I was in Atlantic City for a couple days. They're like, you turned your phone off, you disappeared. I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. And I don't understand. I didn't even think there was anything wrong with that. And I look back on it many years later, and it kind of makes me sick to my stomach that that's what I did to my people that cared the most about me. Because I'm so selfish, I'm so self-centered, and I don't know how to. I can't ever recognize it. I had no idea what was even going on. And through another course of events, I end up a little bit of a car accident. The car jumped out in the middle of the road, and turns into just a rabbit hole of nonsense where the fiance's leaving me because I'm chasing her around the house, punching holes in walls and doing all those kind of crazy things that alcoholic people do when they don't get what they want. And when she left, I was extremely happy because that was a part of my problem. See, being in a relationship was my problem. She kind of wanted me to be normal. That's a problem. She wanted me to be accountable. She wanted me to pay the bills. I remember that. We would fight over paying the bills. I'm like, I'm not paying the bills. And she's like, you have to pay the bills. I'm like, I ain't paying the bills. And we would get fights over paying bills, simple stuff like that. And it wasn't that we didn't have the money to pay the bills. I just wasn't paying them. No, I ain't paying them. No, it's me. They can send a pink slip. And she'd be like, where are we? We bought a house. And I had this arrogance and this nonsense that I had going on. And look, she leaves, and I'm like, this is great. She's gone. I tell you what, that sounded really good for about 6 hours until I was on my mommy's couch. back on my mommy's couch in the fetal position, and I couldn't get drunk anymore. You know the feeling when you go out to drink, you can't even get drunk? It's the worst feeling in the world. I can't even get whacked anymore. And I remember going out drinking, and I couldn't even put a good load on anymore. And I ended up waking up on my parents' couch, and I woke up one morning, I came through, and I said, I can't live like this anymore. I had no idea I was going to get it, because my last night of drinking was lame. I can't even share it. It was so lame. Because if I would have known that was going to be the last time I was going to, I'd have like some kind of rocket, you know, we did this, and planes, and trains, and all that. Nothing. It was lame. It was absolutely lame. Because I didn't have any choice in it. I woke up that day, and I said, I can't live like this anymore. And before I started to think, because my biggest problem's always been my thinking, before I started to think, I said, I need to call my fiance. And I didn't talk to her for days. She had left me at this point, and she answers the phone, and you're a little not very happy. And I said, look, you know, because anybody do this move here, wait, hold on, you just gotta listen to me. Just listen. You know, and I would start, just listen, you gotta understand. Like, I'm gonna tell you. She's like, I'm tired of hearing, just listen. I'm tired of hearing, I'm sorry. I'm tired. I said, can I talk to your dad? And she said, what? I said, can I talk to your dad? See, he was one of you. See, her dad was a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. They called him Crazy Wally, and he was sober 8 years at that point. And that guy was a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He went to AA all the time, and never once tried to take me to an AA meeting. I lived with him for a while and nothing. And what that guy did was perfect, because he knew just how to treat a drunk like me. He'd make fun of me. He told me I was a loser. He was like, you give drinkers a bad name. He would, like, I'd show up at his house. You know, I would show up at his house. There was a period of time that, like, I was living in their house between apartments or whatever. And I remember showing up to his house, and I was so whacked. And I'm like, hey. And I'm like, and they had this beautiful black lab at the time. The dog's name was Ty. And I'm like, I remember the story. I'm like, hi, Ty. And he's like, the dog's name's Ty. And I'm like, yeah, you know, Pie Ty. That's like my little pet name. And he's like, you're an idiot. He's like, look at you, you're pathetic. And he would laugh at me all the time. I come in, he's like, oh, doing good again, huh? And never once did he ever say to me, hey, you want to come to a meeting with me? Never freaking once ever said it. But I tell you what, when I woke up and I didn't know what to do that morning, I knew I needed to call him. And when I called him that morning, fucking, I turned into a softie as I get older, but when I called him that morning, I had just really treated his daughter real poorly a few days before. And I'm a dad of 2 little girls today. I got an 8-year-old and 11-year-old little girl, so I think I have an idea about how he felt about me when I called him. And when I got on the phone with him that day and I said, Wally, I said, I need help. And he said to me, he says, you have a pen? And I said, yep. And he gave me the 800 number at Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, what am I supposed to do? Click. And I tell you what, I look back on that, and I've looked back on that time from then until now, that was the most loving and compassionate freaking thing he could have did. Because he didn't want to hear my nonsense. He didn't want to say anything to hurt me, because he knew I was kind of in a little bit of a bind. And he wasn't really doing well. And what he did was he gave me the 800 number to Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, if you want help, you're going to call these people. And he hung up on me. And before I started thinking, I picked up and I called that 800 number to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I guarantee you there's at least a handful of people in here. I'm looking at some of the people in here. I guarantee there's people that took that hotline number. And for those people, thank you. Because if somebody didn't answer that freaking call that day, I don't know where I'd be. I called that 800 number, and there was a woman that answered the phone. I said, hi, my name's Danny. I think I'm an alcoholic. She's like, oh, this is great. I'm like, what do you mean it's great? And she's like, oh, this is wonderful. I'm like, wonderful? And I'm like, look, I just called Crazy Wally. He just freaking hung up on me. He told me to call you. You're telling me this is wonderful. And she goes, you know what you need to do? I said, I have no idea what I need to do. I'm calling you. And she said, you need to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, look, we're moving way too fast. Way too fast. And she says, where are you at? I said, I'm in Ridley Park. She goes, okay, do you know where St. Madeline's Church is? I said, of course I do. I was an altar boy there my whole life. She goes, so then you know where the rectory is? I said, yeah, I stole Father Stewart's wine here in 3rd grade. And his Father Stewart, he was slick. He had his wine separate than the other priest. And we kind of figured out at an early age, if it was separate, it was probably better. And she said, there's a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in there at 7:30 tonight. She says, why don't you go? I said, I can't go there. And she says, why can't you? I said, I was an altar boy there. She goes, well, there's no requirement that you can't go to church if you weren't an altar boy there. And I said, look, I don't know if you maybe heard this before, but I might see somebody there that I know. And she goes, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, I kind of know a lot of people, and I don't want anybody to see me walking in there. And she said to me, she said, Dan, what do you think those people are going to be doing in there? And I said, I don't know. She said, why don't you find out? And I swear, the smartest thing I've ever said in my entire life, from then to this day, is, I don't know. I don't know. And I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in the church that I was an altar boy on a Sunday evening at 7:30. And I walked downstairs in the basement of a church of Alcoholics Anonymous, and guess what? I saw people I knew. I saw one person that was one of the most respected people, a friend of mine's father that I knew from when I was a kid. I saw him there. He was a Eucharistic minister, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And I thought he was directing me in here. And then he sat down in the AA meeting. And I'm like, wow, like, he's a good dude. What's he doing here? Because I'm not a good dude. I'm like, I ain't a good person. And then I saw another guy I used to get loaded with at the old Ponderosa, and I was like, all right, I'm in. All right, that's where I belong. I'm going to go sit with the Method Man in the back corner. And he wasn't a rapper either. So, but anyway, I sat in my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and what happened was those people signed it was a Living Sober book. I remember them signing Living Sober, and they gave me their phone number, and they said, if you need any help, give a call. And look, I never once called any of those people. But what I did do is I left there that night with a feeling that people actually cared about me. Right? I left there with a feeling that somebody in that room cared enough to give me their phone number and said if I needed help to call. And I started getting involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. There was a clubhouse over in Belmar, New Jersey, not too far where I used to live, called the KISS Club. I started going to that clubhouse, and I'm a clubhouse guy. I love the clubhouse in AA, depending on what circles you're on in AA. Some people like them, some people don't. I'm not on the debating society. I firmly believe that a clubhouse is the ground zero recovery room of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no other place that is more inviting to a drunk when they walk in to know there's a clubhouse that's going to be open all the time, that you can just come in, kick your feet up, and somebody's going to be in there to give you half a cup of coffee because you can't give them a full. And I learned that on. I remember people giving me a half a cup of coffee, and I'm like, well, you guys cheap around here? And now I know why they gave me the half a cup of coffee. And I got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I showed up on a consistent basis, and what happened was I went back crazy sober, right? So so what happens to me is I come realizing I got a drinking problem. Yeah, it's not really good, but my problem starts when I ain't drinking, right? And I had no idea. And there was good people I met in Alcoholics Anonymous that right away told me there's a program of recovery. There's 12 steps and there's traditions on every wall that I've ever been into. And I sit in a meeting and I go, all right, I'm here for the meeting, gotta go, bye. And what I end up turning into the guy is I don't get a sponsor. And eventually I do, because see, what you people are weird in AA, because you keep coming up to you and go, did you get a sponsor? You get a sponsor yet? Who's your sponsor? Who are you working with? Who are you helping? What are you doing this? What are you doing? I'm like, back off. Enough. And I took a liking to some of the old union guys who were in that meeting, because they were rough and tumble, they were rough around the edges. And they're like, and they told me stuff that I needed to hear. They didn't tell me to they just think a guy like you is better off sitting down and listening. Just listen here. And I can remember getting the eureka moments in like 30 days. I'm like, I got it all figured out. And they're like, sit down, kid. And they taught me how to, the first time I ever mopped the floor that I wasn't paid for was in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I say it today, and I ain't proud of it because I probably should have been doing chores as a kid growing up, right? But mommy never made me do any of that kind of stuff. Baby boy doesn't have to do any of that stuff. But the first time I ever mopped the floor that I wasn't paid for it was in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. First time I ever scrubbed ashtrays was in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what those people did was they taught me how to get in service work. See, those people at that clubhouse, they kind of, some of those guys were awesome there because they didn't have to deal with a guy like me. All right, we're going to come in, we're going to get you to start thinking about other stuff other than yourself, because that's all you do is think about yourself, and we're going to start teaching you how to get in service. And see, because I think that they knew me enough that if they would have been like, look, here's your book, we're going to go through this tonight, and you're going to get rocketed into, I don't know that I was down for that. I just don't know. I don't know. I'm pride and ego. Some people, look, I've sponsored plenty, people over the years, and I love when I see somebody that rockets, boom, and, I love what this group does. And Ron was talking about, look, no requirements, come, carry message of hope, love. That's AA. I wasn't that guy. I sat in Alcoholics Anonymous for 3 years, and I went stark raving crazy when I was sober. And I didn't think about drinking because somewhere along the lines, about 7, 8 months, God came in and went and pulled the obsession to drink out of me, right? But then I'm stuck with me. And what's happening, what I didn't realize what was going on is I start becoming the alcoholic, living the double life, sober. I come into AA. Hi, how you doing? Good to see you. Great. Everything's wonderful. Great. Go home. My wife's like, get out of the house. Leave. I'm tired of you. You know, and I go to work, and I'm a workaholic. I mean, I just always have. I work hard. I mean, I'm a worker. So I can go to work. I can focus on work. I can do really good at work. So I got like 3 different lives going on. I got the work life's going really good. I got the AA life, man. I'm everybody's favorite. I got all the bad jokes in the world, the whole 9 yards, and, you know, full nonsense, smoking cigarettes, having a good time, you know. And then my home life's kind of a little not so good. You know, and it was better to the point that I'm not crashing company cars anymore and that kind of stuff. I did start to pay my bills and that. But there was this deep thing going on inside of me that I had no idea what was going on. And I never got a sponsor that I would listen to, because the one time I got this sponsor, this guy Timmy, he was a really good dude. Timmy's still my friend. He's sober almost 40 years today. And I remember him like, Dan, I want you to get you in. I want you to teach you about H&I. I want you to teach you about what it's like to be a member of a home group. I want you to, he gave me the big book. I went, too big? Yeah, I don't do that. The words are big and I don't know what they mean. And I don't like to read. I'm not a reader. I'm still not a reader to this day. I'm an audiobook guy. I love audiobooks. Listen to a lot of them now, but I'm not a reader. And so what I did was I shut myself off on what recovery looks like. And I'm running around stark raving sober for a few years, until somewhere between 3 and 3.5 years sober, I started thinking about suicide when I'm sober. And I'm like, this is rotten. I remember going to meetings and I'm like, look, if I got to live one more day like this, like I'm looking for rafters. I'm like, because if this is what you're talking about, you know, contented, useful life, this ain't it. This ain't working. And there was a hardcore AA meeting over on Wednesday nights over in Cherry Hill. Man, it was a big book step study group over there. And I remember I'm like, I had some friends of mine that were going over to this group. And my one buddy, Marky, I remember him going over there. He goes over there. Mark, so my relationship with Mark fought a cop in a Wawa parking lot when he was 1 year sober, and I like cheered him on. Yes! Woo! And that's the kind of life I was living, right? I was sober, and it was what it was, running around crazy. But then I didn't see Marky for a while, and then I run into him, and I'm like, hey man, how you doing? He's like, I'm actually doing really well. And I'm like, well, that's great. And he goes, you know, I started going over to this different meeting. I got a sponsor. I'm actually working on my 9th step right now, and I'm starting to think I got some hope in life. I'm like, what are you doing, Mark? He's like, you know that. He's like, that meeting over at Cherry Hill. I'm like, yeah? He's like, it's a pretty good meeting. I'm like, maybe I'll go over there. So I go to this. I go to my crazy friends, and I like, what do you think about if I go over to that meeting? Like, nah, I don't know if I do that, kid. You know. And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, those guys are a little rough. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. He's saying it's going well. And then I grabbed one of the old guys in AA. I still respect him today. Crazy, but his message has always been so press point. I grabbed him. I said, Mike, what do you think about that meeting over there in Cherry Hill? And he looked at me and he said, go. He said, Dan, I'm a clubhouse guy. This is where I be, but I know those guys. Go. He says, and tell Teddy the jeweler I said hello. And so I go over there, and I meet these guys over that group, and they were hardcore, about 12 steps, man. They were just about, look, we're going to take you through the big book, we're going to spend time, we're going to take you through program recovery, and we're going to get you to where you need to be. And I went over there, and I couldn't stand any of those people over there, because they were serious, and I'm not. They were mature, and I'm not. And I go in, and it was an hour-and-a-half meeting, too. Talk about, like, that's like forever, an hour and a half. And there was no break either. Like, I'm used to the old clubhouses. They'd have hour-and-a-half break, a 10-minute smoke break. No, they didn't do none of that. They would share on the step. They would have a lead share on the step, and then they would read out of the book, and everybody read out of the big book, right? Go around the room, and then you'd have to share. And the worst of it drove me nuts because I couldn't raise my hand. You're not allowed to raise hands there. We go around in an orderly fashion. I'm like, orderly. So then I'm thinking about, how do I jockey for position on where do I sit? All right, what are we reading tonight? All right, well, it'll probably be about halfway. Let me jockey over here so I can share. And they're like, no, Dan, you're not allowed to share. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you're not allowed to share here until after you've done your 5th step. What do you mean? Like, I got stuff. And they're like, not here. Not here. And so what I had to say is I would sit in that meeting and I would say, my name's Dan, I'm an alcoholic and I'm reading. My name's Dan, I'm an alcoholic, I'm writing. And I wasn't allowed to open up my mouth until after I went through the steps. And it burned my rear end. But man, I tell you what, I know why they did it. They needed me to sit down, they needed me to focus, they needed me to listen to other people's experience, strength, and hope about what was going on for life. I learned how to trust other men to the point, and women too, there's one woman over there who saved my life. I learned how to trust people to a point that I opened up. All that wall, all that stuff that I never shared with anybody, I learned how to tell the truth. I remember doing a fifth step with a guy, and I remember sitting down after writing all that nonsense that I had written down, all this petty stuff. And I remember sitting down and I remember baring my soul to another man. And I remember being scared because there was two things I was never telling anybody in my entire life. The two things was never going on paper and I was never telling anybody. And I remember get done doing it and he said to me, Dan, anything you didn't write on a piece of paper? And I went, now or never. And I remember telling that guy those two things. And I remember him looking at me and he smiled and he went, you too? And I was like, what do you mean? And he kind of laughed and he's like, and he shared some of the stuff that happened to him. And what happened was he de-uniqued me. All of a sudden, I wasn't so unique. All of a sudden, the stuff that I've been holding and bearing my whole entire, walking around with this weight on my body my whole entire life, all of a sudden, it started getting looser and it started getting lighter. All of a sudden, that I wasn't the only one that went through all that stuff. And that I didn't feel so, like, bad about who I was. I started, and then all of a sudden overnight, I mean, you do a good fifth step, and you don't feel very good about yourself. So if you went through a fifth step, you felt great, God bless, but I felt like trash for a few days. But slowly but surely, through going through those steps, getting right with God in 6, 7, going around making amends, I started to feel better about who I was. I started being able to look in the mirror. And I remember Teddy used to always grab me. I'm the guy who looks like this down on my feet. I remember him grabbing me. Look me in the eyes, kid, lift your head up. Ain't that bad. And he says, you ain't that bad. And see, because I always thought I was a rotten person, I make up this thing in my head that I'm a rotten, no good SOB and I'm never going to amount to anything. Now, nobody ever told me that as a kid. I know plenty of friends of mine whose parents told them that. Nobody ever told me that growing up. My dad never said that to me. But I walked around thinking that I'm a rotten, no good SOB and I'm never going to amount to anything. And I don't know where I made it up. I made it up in my head. And the things that I do and the things I put into my body to try to numb that noise for a long time put me in this state where I didn't know how to tell anybody the truth. I couldn't look anybody in the eyes. And I didn't know how to have any kind of meaningful relationship with anybody. And Alcoholics Anonymous showed me how to live life different. So, like, I learned how to, I can put a drink there. Look, my experience says somebody like me, I can stay, I can stay without a drink on Fear and Fellowship for a period of time. I did it myself. But what happened was you guys showed me there's a program of recovery that opened me up to this life that I've been living for the last however many years. That is wonderful and it's painful at the same time, right? So I've had an opportunity to do some great stuff. I had a chance to go back and make it right with my parents. I had a chance to go make it right with a lot of people. There's nowhere I go today that I'm looking over my shoulder. Through constant practice, right? Because then when if you put yourself around a good group of people that believe in the 12-step work, as soon as you kind of start doing this, making amends, they're like, all right, go find somebody to help. I'm like, what am I going to help him? I'm going to kill him. And I can remember when the first person asked me to sponsor him. I remember calling my sponsor Mikey. I'm like, Mikey, he's a kid at the club. He's like, he asked me to sponsor him. I'm like, that's great. I'm like, no, it ain't great. I don't know what to do with him. What am I going to say to him? He's going to say the same thing I said to him. He's like, Dan, and here's the reality of it. He's a new kid. He's got no idea what you're saying to him is right or wrong anyway, right? You know, he's got no idea. He's like, make it up. It doesn't make a difference. And I kind of believe a lot of that today. I believe that when two drunks' hearts are in it, the words are meaningless. I don't, look, I spent a lot of time in sobriety studying in the ins and outs of that big book. My kid's 8. She's really smart. She can read that book. She can parrot it back too, But I spent a lot of time studying that stuff. And I don't know how important the words are anymore. I believe that when two drunks are heart are in it, there's that, that language of the heart that happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. That it really doesn't matter what you say. Did you do the perfect fifth step? Did you write it the right way? You did 4 columns, 3 columns? Well, I don't care. I did 27 columns. I don't care. Do it out of the big book. Do it out of the 12 and 12. There's a checklist that off the debating society could care less. Do it. That's kind of where I came through. I went through, because you get me, I'm full of nonsense. You give me a little bit of understanding or something, I'm going to run with it. I became a professor of how to help people. And look, I ran around for a long time in Alcoholics Anonymous, helping a lot of people, probably hurt some too. And well-meaning, running around with a big book, hey, doing, what's going on? Here, I'll save you tonight, come with me. And, I did a lot of that stuff. And I don't regret it for a second because, man, I just have some cool experiences in Alcoholics Anonymous there's nothing more do I love today. I'm so happy to hear this group takes, detox commitments. I do still to this day. I have consistently through my whole recovery. It's so important to be there in treatment centers to try to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Me and one of the guys, Keith, we started doing one through COVID, not too far from us, and we do it every month. And I don't know, it's real important to me and to get in service work. So. But so I started running around. I had a cool experience. I've helped a handful of guys over the years. And through that, I got a chance to build relationships with other men, right? Through doing this work, I got a chance to mend relationships with my wife, right? I remember going through making amends. I'll share a couple little amends stuff. I remember going to amends, and I'm like rocked up. I'm going to make the amends. I got the list, and I'm debating. Do I do the cards where I yes, now, maybe card, or I just do the list, and that, whatever. And I'm running around making amends, and I going to do this amends, and I'm doing that amends, and I'm like, I didn't treat you with the dignity. So my sponsor made it real easy. It's like, Dan, somebody like you, make it easy and painless on whoever you're approaching. And tell that person you didn't treat them with the dignity, honor, and respect they deserved. And it covers it all. And he says, did you ever say that to anybody? I'm like, what? He's like, did you ever say to somebody, hey, I didn't treat you with the dignity, honor, and respect you deserve? I'm like, no. And he's like, did you ever tell somebody you were wrong? I'm like, no. And so what I learned through the men's process is to acknowledge the fact that I didn't treat people right and tell them that I was wrong. Because I'm a sorry guy. I'm going to be honest, I'm sorry all the time. Sorry is like every other sorry. Meaningless sorries. My whole life was full of meaningless sorries. And I remember going through and making the amends, right? And I'm making this amends, and I come home and I tell my wife, check in, and babe, jacked another one of those amends off the list. And she's like, God damn, that's really good. I'm glad you're doing it. That's good. And then I go and I make this big spectacle. I go over and I sit down with my folks, and I make this big spectacle. And I didn't check with my wife because I made a commitment to some financial restitution that I probably should have checked with my wife before I made the commitment to it. And I come back and I tell her, look, this is what we're doing. And she's like, okay. And she didn't say anything. And I can remember one night, I'm sitting in the parking lot, and I'm at the AA meeting, and I'm telling him about making amends. And the guy says, Uncle Teddy says to me, so how'd that amends go with your wife? And I went, well, I ain't got that one yet. And he goes, you didn't think that's important? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you didn't think that's important? He says, you're telling me about all your amends, but you don't think that one's important? You sleep next to a woman every night? And I remember I called my wife up. I said, hey, we got to talk tonight. And look, at that point in my life, I don't know if everybody knows what that life, the whole I got to talk when we get home things, that could go either way. And my wife's like, what's going on? Like, what's the problem? It's not, we got to talk. And I remember I went home that night, and I remember I sat down with my wife, and I looked at her, and I acknowledged her. I said, look, I'm wrong. I said, my selfish, self-centered SOB is running around telling you about all these great amends stories, and you should have been number one, and I didn't realize it. And she looked at me, and she started to cry. And we both cried. And we went through the rabbit hole of making the amends, and kind of she had a chance to tell me how she felt about some things, and she did it in a way of love, and she hurt my feelings, and I needed it. And I'd love to tell you that was the only time I've had to make amends to my wife, but we've done a lot of them over the years. And but through doing this stuff and recognizing this stuff, I came through a place, like, in my life that, with my wife, that, like, my wife's my best friend. I mean, and, like, I didn't think I'd ever be able to say, you know, people say that, my wife's my best friend. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I'm like, my wife's my, and, like, we came through it over the last so many years. I mean, we've been through a lot together. So Alcoholics Anonymous has kept me sober, and the relationship I built with God has kept me through infertility. We tried to have children, couldn't have children. Worst thing in the world for a couple to ever go through. If you ever had to go through it, it's terrible. You know, I'm taking these needles and I'm jamming them in my wife and, you know, trying to, you know, and we're going through trying to have effect. Because all my wife ever wanted to do was be a mom. Like, that's it. Like, that's all she ever been. She wanted to be a mom. And we couldn't have kids, and it took us 6 years trying to have children. Heartache, loss, and anybody ever been through it, it's terrible. But I stayed in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous all through that. And remember when my first daughter Julia was born, and she came out, and, like, my wife, she had a terrible pregnancy. The last 30 days she spent in, you know, she had all these issues. She was in the hospital for 30 days. I felt so bad for her. I'm going to work, I'm coming there, I'm AA, and I'm all over the place. I don't know how God-centered I was through those last 30 days of her pregnancy, but you know what I did do is I showed up. You told me to show up. And I remember when my daughter was born, man, she came out. She was really early, and they had all these doctors and all these people, and, you know, the NICU team was all ready to rock and roll because they had prepared for us that, hey, we might, you know, there may be some issues with your daughter. And I was scared. And I remember when my daughter came out, man, she was 5 pounds, 5 ounces. She was this tiny little peanut. And they took her and they ran her over and they're doing all this. And I'm like, what? And my wife's going, what's going on? I said, I don't know. They got the baby over on a table over there. I don't know what's going on. And she's like, is she okay? And I'm like, I don't know. She's crying. She's like, that's good. And I'm like, I don't know. And I remember them swaddle that little baby up and they come over like, here you go, Dad. She's yours. She's fine. I was like, wow. Like, that was cool. That was an awesome experience to be able to become a dad. And I never wanted to be a dad. I'll be the first to tell you. I lied to her and told her, yeah, I can't wait to have a family. I was petrified. I didn't know what to do. It was called responsibility. And I just stopped thinking about me. That stinks. And so that little girl, she's 11 now. And a few years later, we had another little girl. She's 8 now, Skylar. And we have a beautiful little family, you know, and I work real hard at trying to be the best dad I can be. I spend a lot of time with my children, trying to give them the love, and not that I didn't get it from my parents, it's not a shot at them, but like I think it's kind of, hopefully, at least for me and my wife tried to make a decision, we're to try to raise our children in a better situation than we were, right? It's just kind of simple. I think a lot of people want to do that. And like I spent a lot of time with my kids, and it gives me a lot of practice to make amends to little girls. Because I'd love to tell you that I handle everything with dignity and grace every day. I do not. I'd love to sit up here and tell you, I never get angry because I do my 11-step written inventory every night, which I do. You know, I have an email thing, I do it with my sponsor, you know, and I do that to try to keep centered. And I get good with it, and then I forget about it for 5 days. And but I'd love to tell you through doing this that I become pure as a driven snow, not the case. I'd love to tell you that I never get angry, not the case. I'd love to tell you I never get full of fear, not the case. That kind of stuff happens, it crops up. But Alcoholics Anonymous has showed me there's a way for me to get recentered, and there's things I can do to get right back on it. And next thing you know, it only takes a little bit of practice, right? You know, like I'm coaching my daughter's t-ball or softball this year. Yeah, I'm coaching. Yeah, I coach nothing, and I hadn't swung I'm like rotten, but I show up. And I hadn't swung a baseball bat in years. You know what, man? Just a tiny little bit of practice again, you know, and you hit the ball, right? And it's the same thing as Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the same set as practicing that stuff. I don't know anybody that does it perfect. I know when I stop doing it, all it takes is just a little bit of willingness to get back in and start getting consistent again. And next thing you know, it's like, oh my God, I feel better. This is good. And I try to do that, man. I really, really, really try to do that. And I try to become, you know, Tony and I were having some fun laughing in the car, driving up, just talking about different things. And I try to just not take myself too serious. Right, I just really, you know, I just don't take myself, like I wake up every day and I go, you know, like I just do. I wake up and I go, you know, because I've been sober long enough to know that I've been to too many funerals of people that are nicer than me, that should have had this, that deserved it just as much as anybody in this damn room tonight. And I don't have the reason why. And there's too many times I had to look at people's parents in the eyes and say, I'm sorry. And when the dad says, why my son? And I say, I don't know. I don't want to do that. You know, so I show up. And every day I go, I guess God's got some use for me still. Right? And I don't know, like you hear all kinds of rotten stuff going on in life, you know. Things happen, and I don't know the answers to all that kind of stuff. I just know is every day I wake up, all right, God's got work for me to do. Let me go out. And my work has to start with, like in the morning, it starts with, I got to take care of my kids, right? I'd love to tell you I get this perfect quiet time every morning like the big book tells me to do. I wake up in the morning. It's, all right, Joel, I got you. I'm making lunches for the girls. Breakfast, got you on it. I let my wife sleep in most mornings because, you know, I like to get up with my kids. I'm an early bird. And so, but I grew up in a household where dad don't do nothing. You know, mom does it all, right? And you know what? I like kind of doing stuff. You know what I mean? It was just different times, different culture with all. But I get up in the morning, I make sandwiches in the morning, and I do this, and I do that, and I make the coffee. But I do, at some point, after the chaos and the first thing in the morning, I sit quiet, and I grab a book. and there's a book I read, and I read a little pages out of that, and I get quiet, and I drink the coffee, and then the girls wake up and they're fighting with each other, and I'm going, yo, I'm trying to read. And look, I don't know if it's perfect, but it's what I do, and I have a kind of routine, and it works. I don't know, it just works. This stuff works, right? You know, I can't think of, you know, too many times where I go where I stray too far off this path, right? There's a program. I'm not here to teach it to you. I'm just here to share my story. You know, hopefully you got a sponsor to teach you that stuff. I'm not an authority on anything. I'm just a drunk who got sober. I got struck sober one day, came into AA, thought that if I stopped drinking, life would get better. And I realized that, like, when I stopped drinking, my problem starts. And then you guys showed me how to kind of do some stuff. See, I didn't know that. I still go into AA meeting, and then I remember I was going through a phase, because I got a little bit of time, go through a phase where, like, I go into an AA meeting, and I hear things to me that are not what I know as AA, and I go, oh, these people are sick. They're the sick ones, and I am here to fix them today. And what I'm able to do is just go, it's not my job. I'm here to show up, I'm here to put my hand out. If somebody asks, I answer. But I stop giving my opinions on certain stuff because I'm off the debating society. That's where I want to be, you know. And I have friends of mine who are like, Dad, but you remember we go to the meetings and we light it all? Yeah, and they're still doing it. And God bless, I love them. And there's purpose for that too. There's purpose for that too. Come on, let's go disturb them about their alcoholism tonight. Yeah, let's go. Woo! Go find the craziest meeting in Philly and go in there and tell everybody they're doing it wrong. But come with us. Come with us. Come with us. Not me today, you know. There's purpose for it, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So I'll share a quick story and I'll end because it's one thing that I believe is Alcoholics Anonymous to a T. I get sober at a clubhouse. My buddy Vinny, nicest guy. Anybody know the clubhouse guy, the nicest guy in the world, always figuring his hand, always had his hand hanging out. How you doing, brother? What's going on? Good to see you. Nicest guy in the world. Always my friend. Somewhere along in my journey of recovery, he decides he's going to call me Big Book Dan, and I took that as a badge of honor. Thank you, Vince. I like that. Put that in your cell phone as that, because it sounds good. And so then I catch a resentment, you know, years later. I catch a resentment at the clubhouse where I got sober at because they weren't doing it my way, and I had to go elsewhere. Broaden my horizons. And I would run into Vinny every once in a while. I'd run into him at the Wawa close by to the house because he would live close by. And I'm like, yo, Vince, what's up? He's like, hey, buddy, how you been? And he says, why don't you stop over to the club, see some of your friends? We miss you. I'm like, you know, I'm just doing some different stuff right now, you know, just checking out some different meetings, doing this. But, you know, he's like, every once in a while, he'd still say, Dan, why don't you come on over? And so the reason why I didn't go there was because I had talked trash about all those people, right? Because I know more than they do at this point. And I started to pop back up in that clubhouse. And when I started popping back up in that clubhouse, I really got a chance to get put in service because Vince was saying to me, like, new guys would come in and say, hey, why don't you go talk to Danny over there? He'll help you. And that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, he'd help me. Yeah, that's great. And what he did was he taught me how to stop realizing I ain't that damn important. It was great. And I ended up getting real involved in that clubhouse again. We had a meeting like this in that clubhouse, similar to that. It was rocking for years. You know, Sunday nights at 7 was great. There was drunks just stacked into that place. It was awesome. And people were getting help, and it was really awesome. It was a great experience, and thank God for Vince. And then I run into a friend of mine, and he says, look, he somehow was shooting the crap, and he goes, did you hear about Vinny? I said, no. He goes, he's sick. I said, what do you mean? He goes, not doing well. And I'm like, oh, God. So I shoot my buddy Vince. I call him. He doesn't answer. I shoot him a text. And I say to him, hey, Vince, I heard you're not doing well. Is there anything I can do for you? I live close by the neighborhood if you need anything. And he shoots me his text back, and it was something along the lines, hey, buddy, it's really nice to know I got a good friend like you. Not really feeling well that right now, but like when I start feeling better, I'd love for you to stop over. Hope to see you soon. Thanks, Vince. And said, like, this is the guy, greatest guy in the world. I remember he was sober, I don't care, a bazillion years, and I remember trying to, like, 12-step one time. He's sober like a bazillion years. I'm like, Vince, when was the last time you, like, went through and had this experience with this book? And he's like, you know, Dan, that's not me, that's other people. But, you know, I'm just a regular guy in AA. I just reach my hand out, and I try to be of service. And I'm like, yeah, but, you know, Vince, there's this amazing experience that happens to me. He's like, yeah, I appreciate it, Dan, you know. And so anyway, so that's at one point in life. And he never made fun of me for it. He just let it go because he knew where I was at. And then so I ended up finding out not too long after that Vince passes away, right? Vince passed away. I hear through the grapevine, Vinny passes away. And I do what you guys tell me to do. Put your suit and tie on, and you show up and you pay respect to the family, because that's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. We show up for good and for bad, and we show up. I remember I'm sitting in line, going into the church, and I'm in line with all my friends from the clubhouse I hadn't seen in a while, and I'm shooting the crap and this, that, and the third, and I see his son come over to me, and I had tried to help his son years before, and hey, how you doing, Mike? And he says, hey, Danny, how you doing? All right? I said, good. I said, look, man, I feel terrible. I said, I was hoping to see your dad. And I said I had reached out to him, and I didn't realize how bad he was. And he goes, Dan, he told me you reached out to him. He was so happy that you reached out to him. It meant a lot to him that you sent him a text. And I said, I loved your father. He was like the greatest guy in the world. He goes, Dan, toward the end, he didn't really even look at his phone much because he was really not doing well, and he really didn't get back to anybody. But I remember him telling me that you had reached out. And I'm like, yeah, he was a great guy. And so we're in line. And you go up in the procession, and you go up and you got the family makes the pictures and all that kind of stuff, and they got little trinkets and all that, little things that were important to people to take a look at when you're going along. And so Vince used to always talk about going to, he would go to Bermuda every year on a cruise with his wife, and he would always talk about him hitting an AA meeting in Bermuda. It was like a big thing. Every time he would come back, was in Bermuda, I went to a meeting again, it was great, and it was like super important to him. And so I remember seeing there, and he had like these AA like meeting lists from Bermuda. And I like pick them up, right? And I'm like, look at this. This is Vinny's meeting list from Bermuda and all. And I look over, and then what do I see? I see a big book. But not just a regular old big book. This is the leather case. You know what I mean? The leather case, the coin in the center. When I walk with that, I am walking with purpose, that case. One of them sitting there. It looks like mine. And I'm like, oh, wow, I wonder where that came from. So I open up the big book, and as I open up the big book, there's Vince's big book. And as I'm looking through, Vince's big book is underlined, and it's highlighted, and it's got notes, and it's got cards, and it's got this, and it's got that, and it's got the... And I'm looking through, and he's first step, and he has it underlined, and it's second step, he has it underlined. And I started laughing. Now, Vince's story to me is he never read that big book, right? That was his story. I don't do that, Dan. That guy knew that book upside down, inside out, and backwards. And what he did was he showed in his actions how he treated a newcomer. And I sat there in his service, and I started laughing. I'm smiling. I'm like, you rotten SOB. And I started laughing. He had his final laugh, because I'm reading his big book, and I'm going, look at this guy. Me thinking he's just one of these old guys in AA that doesn't know nothing. He just don't drink one day at a time and try to be a nice guy. And that guy had the same exact experience that I had sometime along the lines, but he didn't feel the need for me to run around and tell everybody. And what I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is there's purpose for everything. There's purpose for our people that are on the firing lines trying to help everybody, and there's also purpose for our old timers that are quietly sitting in AA. Thank you.
Once again, good evening, everybody. My name's Brian. I'm still an alcoholic. First and foremost, I want to thank our speaker, Danny. Thank you for coming out here tonight and just delivering an incredible message of hope and recovery to our group here. Once again, the food and fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock. We always have the coffee and refreshments out, so feel free to join us early, come socialize. If you want to get involved with this group and get involved with some service work, we'd love to have you. If you want to help us out some service work after the meeting, you can help us put away some chairs. We've got to put away these ones in the front and the ones on the side. The ones on those tables will stay right where they are. But more importantly, if you're out there and if you're new or if you're struggling or if you've been coming around for a while and it's just not working, hit the meeting after the meeting, grab somebody after the meeting. We'll all be hanging out for a little while. Stay with us. It's customary for us to thank our speakers. They come here on their own time and expense. Usually we form a line in the front here and we thank our speakers personally. Thanks to everybody for being service to this group, our greeters. Thanks to Howard for taking care of the kitchen back there. And once again, let's thank our speaker one more time, Danny. And if you do care to join us, we have a nice way of closing.